Have you ever wondered why some people manage to keep their homes organized even when they have a chaotic routine? I discovered the secret, and it's nothing like you imagine. I'm 52 years old, I have 3 grown-up children and a husband who works alternating shifts. For 30 years, I followed all those basic organization tips I found in magazines and on the internet, but nothing worked for very long. You know that feeling of coming home after an exhausting day and finding everything out of place? That's how I felt every day, until I developed my own method. I can't stand seeing experts in their 20s giving unrealistic advice about home organization. I'm going to share with you what really works, based on decades of real experience. First, forget everything you know about organization. That whole idea of a place for everything is nice in theory, but in practice? Well, in practice you need to be strategic. I discovered that the secret lies in creating zones of controlled chaos. Yes, you read that right. Instead of fighting against the disorganized nature of family life, I learned to work with it. For example, that kitchen drawer everyone has, full of knickknacks? I turned mine into an emergency station. I didn't organize it by categories as everyone suggests. Instead, I created a system based on frequency of use. The items I use daily are placed at the front, but the most interesting part is that I keep a small empty space, what I call the transition zone, where I temporarily put things I need to deal with during the day. One of the most surprising discoveries I made was about the timing of organization. Forget that idea of tidying everything up before bed. I discovered that the best 10 minutes for organizing are exactly at 4:45 p.m. Why? Because it is the moment when our brain is still alert but beginning to slow down. It is when we can make quick decisions without the anxiety of the early day or the tiredness of the night. Another thing that nobody talks about, the importance of what I call rapid decision points. In every room in my house, I created small areas where I need to make decisions in 3 seconds or less. If it takes longer than that to decide where to put something, it goes directly into a specific box that I empty once a week. This avoids that paralysis of overthinking where to place each item. I remember when my eldest daughter, now 28 years old, told me I was becoming obsessive with organization. Little did she know that I was developing a system that would allow me to spend more time with my family. The trick is not to be a perfectionist, it's to be strategic. For example, I keep a 5-minute box on every floor of the house. When I find something out of place and don't have time to put it away, it goes into this box. The rule is, if the box fills up before the next organization session, it means I need to reassess my system. One of the biggest discoveries I made was about what I call residual energy. You know when you quickly put something away just to get it out of sight? I calculated that I was spending about 40 minutes a day looking for things I had hidden from myself. That's when I developed the pause points system. In every room, I have a specific spot, usually a pretty tray or basket, where I temporarily place items that I don't have time to properly store. The difference is that I set a time limit. Nothing can stay in the pause point for more than 24 hours. It's like a purgatory for lost objects, but with an expiration date. Another thing that nobody talks about is what I call the moment of honesty. Every Sunday at 7 p.m., I ask each out-of-place object a single question. Did you bring me joy or utility in the last 48 hours? If the answer is no, it goes into one of 3 boxes: donation, recycling, or I'll think about it later. The interesting thing is that the I'll think about it later box is rarely opened again, which has taught me a lot about emotional attachment to objects. I also developed what I call the contrast rule. I realized that our brain processes organization better when there are clear differences between spaces. For example, in my kitchen, I intentionally alternate between highly organized areas and more flexible spaces. This creates a visual rhythm that makes it easier to maintain overall organization, because your brain automatically wants to keep that contrast pattern. One of my most useful inventions was the seasonal rotation system of needs. It's not just about storing winter clothes in the summer, it goes much further. Every 3 months, I do a complete mapping of the usage patterns in the different areas of the house. For example, I discovered that in winter we use the living room more, so I redistribute the organization resources to make that space more efficient during that season. I remember when my husband laughed at my 5 surfaces theory. It states that any horizontal surface in the house can only accumulate items for 5 consecutive days. After that, it must be completely empty for 24 hours. It's like a visual reset that helps break the cycle of accumulation. At first it seemed radical, but after I implemented it, I noticed a 70% reduction in overall clutter. The concept of micro-zones of responsibility also revolutionized my organization. Instead of dividing the house into rooms, I divided it into small areas of 1 square meter. Each microzone has its own rules and a maximum maintenance time, never more than 2 minutes. This makes the process less intimidating and more manageable. An interesting discovery was about what I call organizational momentum. I realized that, just like an athlete needs a warm-up, our mind also needs to prepare for organizing. I always start with the same microzone every day, the kitchen sink counter. This creates a ritual that automatically puts my brain into organization mode. Something I discovered by accident was the reverse domino effect. Contrary to what everyone says about starting with the messiest spaces, I found that beginning with the areas that are already partially organized creates a much stronger psychological momentum. It's as if your brain thinks, well, since it's almost done, let's finish. I use this strategically to motivate myself on the toughest days. I also developed what I call the 3-breath method. Before starting any organization task, I pause for 3 full breaths and visualize exactly how I want the space to look. It sounds simple, but it drastically reduces the time I spend rearranging things over and over because I didn't have a clear plan from the start. One of my most controversial techniques is what I call the programmed chaos zone. Once a month, I deliberately let a specific room become disorganized for 24 hours. This helps me identify the true problem areas in the house and how clutter naturally forms. It's like a controlled experiment that allows me to adjust my organization systems. I also created the orphan object protocol. You know those things you find around the house and have no idea where they came from or who they belong to. I now have a specific shelf for them, with one rule: if no one claims them within 72 hours, the item is gone. It's amazing how rarely anyone misses these objects. A fascinating discovery was about what I call the Monday morning energy. I realized that I try to be more organized on Mondays, so I started to use that to my advantage. I schedule the most challenging tasks for that day, when I am naturally more willing to keep things in order. It's like riding a wave of natural productivity. The concept of transition spaces also changed my life. These are small areas between rooms where I place items that need to be relocated, but I don't have time at the moment. The rule is, nothing can stay in these spaces for more than a day, and it must be on its way to its final destination, not just parked there. Another technique I developed is the invisible color system. Mentally, I divide the house into color zones based on the energy level each space requires. Red areas need daily attention, yellow can wait a few days, and green only need weekly maintenance. This helps me prioritize without needing labels or visible markings. One of my most useful discoveries was about what I call the critical decision moment. Those are the 3 seconds when you're deciding whether to properly store something or just toss it anywhere. I learned to recognize that moment and turn it into a trigger for positive action, using the rule, if it takes less than 1 minute, do it now. A technique that revolutionized my routine is what I call the echo method. Every time I remove something from its place, I immediately think of another item that I can return to its proper spot. It's like creating an echo of organization for every act of messing up. This maintains a constant balance and prevents that feeling that the house is gradually falling apart. I also developed the visual anchoring principle. In every room, I choose a focal point that I always keep impeccably organized. It could be a bookshelf in the living room, the kitchen island, or the dresser in the bedroom. This point serves as a psychological anchor, motivating me to keep the rest of the space at the same standard. An interesting discovery was what I call the boomerang effect of organization. I realized that the more I tried to control every detail, the more things seemed to spiral out of control. So, I began practicing what I call loose organization. I set general guidelines but allow for some flexibility. Surprisingly, this resulted in a generally more organized home. I also invented the focus rotation system. Every week, I choose a different aspect of organization to concentrate on intensely. It might be horizontal surfaces one week, drawers and cabinets the next. This avoids the overwhelming feeling of having to keep everything perfect all the time and creates a natural cycle of maintenance. The concept of rapid decision zones changed my approach as well. In every room, I created small areas where I have to quickly decide the fate of an item, to store it, donate it, or discard it. This prevents items from wandering around the house without a defined purpose. A technique I love is the 10-item challenge. Before going to bed, I choose 10 objects that are out of place and put them away. It's quick, not exhausting, and makes a noticeable difference over time. Moreover, it creates a sense of accomplishment that helps me sleep better. I also developed the mental photograph method. Regularly, I take mental snapshots of the most organized spaces in my house. When things start to get messy, I compare the current state with those photos and adjust as needed. It's an effective way to maintain a consistent standard without becoming obsessive. The natural flow principle was another important discovery. I observed how items naturally flow through the house during the day and organized storage spaces along these natural paths. For example, I placed a small cabinet near the entrance for items that always end up tossed on the couch. One of my favorite techniques is the daily reset ritual. Every day at 8 p.m., I spend 5 minutes in each main room doing a quick reset. It's not a deep clean, but a quick return to the baseline state of organization. This prevents the gradual buildup that leads to major clutter. One of my most surprising discoveries was what I call the extreme contrast technique. Once a month, I let a room become completely messy for an entire day. It sounds crazy, I know, but it really works. This experience of contrast sharpens our perception of organization and motivates us to keep things in order on other days. I also developed the energy rotation system. I realized that I have different energy levels for organizing throughout the week. So, I mapped my energy peaks and aligned the more challenging organization tasks with those moments. For example, Monday mornings are perfect for reorganizing cabinets, while Thursday afternoons are ideal for a quick overall tidy-up. The concept of organizational microhabits revolutionized my routine. Instead of long sessions of tidying, I incorporated small habits throughout the day. For example, every time I leave a room, I take something that doesn't belong there with me. It's almost imperceptible at the moment, but it makes a huge difference over time. A technique I love is the 60-second game. Several times a day, I take a 1-minute pause to organize whatever is within reach. It's quick, doesn't interrupt my day, and keeps the mess under control. Plus, it turns organization into something almost playful. The strategic visibility principle also changed my approach. I realized that visible items tend to be used, or stored, more frequently. So, instead of hiding everything, I started leaving certain items organized and in plain sight. This not only makes them more accessible, but also constantly reminds us to keep them in order. I created what I call rapid decision zones in every room. These are small areas where I have to quickly decide the fate of an object, store it, donate it, or discard it. This prevents items from wandering around the house without a defined purpose. A fascinating discovery was the domino effect of organization. I noticed that keeping one specific space impeccably organized, like the coffee table in the living room, creates a cascading effect, motivating us to keep the surrounding areas equally tidy. The moving box method is another technique I love. I keep a box that circulates throughout the house during the week. Any item out of place goes into this box, and at the end of the week, I spend 15 minutes emptying and organizing its contents. I also developed the organizational gratitude ritual. Before going to bed, I choose 3 things in the house that are organized and express gratitude for them. This shifts the focus from the constant struggle against clutter to an appreciation of what is already in order. Finally, my deepest discovery was understanding that true organization is not about perfection, but about creating a space that works for our real life. It's about finding a balance between order and the natural chaos of family life. Sometimes, the best organization is knowing when to relax and enjoy the creative mess that arises when the family is together. Remember, every home is unique, just like every family. The secret is to experiment, adapt, and above all, be kind to yourself in the process. Organization should serve your life, not dominate it. With these techniques and a little patience, you can transform your home into a space that breathes order, but also love and life. After all, at the end of the day, it's the memories we create, not the perfection we maintain, that truly matter. Let me tell you something I learned after breaking 3 vacuum cleaners and going through 2 back crises. The height of the furniture matters more than its organization. I changed all the surfaces in my house to 85 centimeters in height. The perfect height to avoid unnecessary bending. This completely changed my efficiency in cleaning and organizing.